I found a letter from a Vietnam veteran. Now I'm seeing the same things he did. A few months ago, I moved into a small town in rural Ohio. The place was cheap, a rundown little house that used to belong to a retired Vietnam veteran. They said he passed away in the nearby forest back in the 70s. The house was nearly empty, except for some old furniture and dust. But on my first night, I found something strange. An old, folded letter tucked between the sofa cushions. I'm not sure why, but I felt like I had to read it. Here's what it said. I lost my best friend in Vietnam. He said he found paradise. It was a strange day, the last day I ever saw him. It happened during the Battle of Giao Ting in Vietnam. A brutal, unforgiving war. The terror still clings to me. Guerrillas set up traps and killed my comrades silently. Day or night, it didn't matter. They were like ghosts stalking us, studying us, learning how we moved, how we lived, so they could kill us better. Every night we tried to rest, but the sun would rise again just to blind us with fresh fear. One by one, the ghosts took us. They were patient. Our lead officer got cocky. The next day we found him ripped in half, painting the green ground crimson. They chewed through us slowly, savoring every moment, knowing if they made even a single sound we would fill them with lead. Blood filled the lakes, blood filled our minds. We barely slept. Our bodies twitched and trembled, our minds stretched thin, knowing death could come at any second. But at least I had him, the one person who kept me sane, Angelo, my best friend. I met him during training, free-spirited, fearless, a little rebellious. Everyone loved him. He once showed me a picture of his family, 4 smiling kids, and a beautiful wife. I can't wait to go home and wrap my arms around them, he said. Smiling through tears, he never slacked. He trained hard, harder than any of us. But because of that, he was always hungry, constantly raiding the canteen. He had dreams. He had purpose. One night, deep in the jungle, the darkness thickened like fog. I stayed up on watch, exhausted but too scared to sleep. I asked Angelo to take the next shift. Angelo? He nodded too fast, unnaturally like a puppet. Something felt wrong. But I was too tired to think about it. A few hours later, I heard him whispering, over and over, soft, repeating, like he was praying. At midnight, I heard him clearly. I found paradise. Come with me. I opened my eyes. I saw him sprinting into the jungle barefoot, fast, desperate. I followed, called his name, but he disappeared into the darkness. Gone. I stumbled back to our tent, shaking. His hammock was empty. All that remained was his hanging, chipped dog tag. We couldn't search in the dark. Too dangerous. When daylight came, we searched. No sign, no blood, no tracks, no Angelo. The war ended years later. I demanded an investigation. The CIA called it MIA. Missing in action. Some soldiers said he went mad. Others said he tried to escape hell, but his body was never found. When I came home, everything was gone. My family was distant. No girlfriend. No friends, nothing. I tried drinking. I tried drugs. Nothing numbed it. Every night I walked to a hilltop and smoked cigars under the moonlight. And that's when I started hearing them. Voices, soft and promising, whispering through the stars. Follow us. They opened my eyes. Angelo was right. He found paradise. I followed him there. You should too. When I finished reading the letter, I took a picture of it to show to my friends, and I laughed it off. Crazy old soldier stuff, I thought. But last night, while I was sitting outside, smoking a cheap cigar, or at least I thought it was a cigar, and staring up at the moon, I swear I heard whispering, "Follow us." I froze. Slowly I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. I checked the whole damn yard, still nothing. Then I muttered to myself, "Holy shit! This place is fucking haunted, and I'm here just trying to relax for once." I slipped the old letter back exactly where I found it. I didn't want anything to do with that paranormal sheet. A week later, I packed up and moved to a different town, but even now, I can't shake the feeling. I still haven't had a decent night's sleep since. But at least I'm starting to see his truth now. Our summer adventure turned into a real horror story. True story. Me and my friends were exploring this abandoned building once. And it was crazier than we thought. So me and my 3 friends, let's call them Joe, Bud, and Reagan. We were bored on the last day of summer and wanted something exciting to do. Bud said, how about we go explore something? At first we didn't really want to do that. It felt too boring. All the abandoned buildings around our town were already explored or demolished, but Bud told us about a new abandoned building. One that any of us had ever heard about. We hadn't even seen the building, even though almost all of us had lived in that town for 18 years. Except for Reagan, he moved in a couple of years back. Once Bud told us about a house that we had never heard of. All of us got very excited. All the other abandoned buildings were lame, but this one sounded very thrilling. The building is said to be an old psych ward, Bud said. That got us even more excited. How old is it? I asked. I don't really know, Bud said. All I know is that it's abandoned and supposed to be very scary, and there may even be traps, Bud added. Wow, we all said in unison. The traps made it more exciting for us because we were young and thought it's like a video game. We got outside, hopped on our bikes, and took off. We stopped by a store and got some snacks and energy drinks to enjoy while we were inside the building. Then it was time to go. We went into a forest nearby. Bud was the only one who knew where this place was. That made me a little bit suspicious about this whole thing. That and the fact that this was supposed to be an abandoned psych ward that none of us knew about. We walked on this path through a dense forest. The path was old and no one had been there in ages, or so we thought. It was dark even though it was during the day because the forest was that dense. Then I started to see light coming through the thick leaves and branches in a building. Pretty small, I thought. The building was quite small, about the size of a 2-story house. It looked small because I imagined a psych ward to be huge. It looked abandoned, but not completely worn off by the weather. The windows had bars on them and the paint was in pretty good shape. Few cracks here and there, but nothing big. Surprisingly, it did not have any fence or gate surrounding it. Just the building in the middle of the woods. How the hell have we not heard about this? Joe said. I don't know, I answered in disbelief. We walked up to the front door. It looked almost normal, but it too had bars on its windows. We tried the handle, clicked the door unlocked, and we opened it. As we got inside, everything looked brand new. Walls were painted a light blue color, and the floor was made from wood, all in darn good shape for an abandoned building. Everyone was pretty anxious about the whole thing. I could feel it. How long has this even been abandoned? I asked. I don't know, but it doesn't look abandoned, Bud said with this horrified look on his face. He looked like he didn't have any clue about this place. And from how he talked earlier, it seemed like he had been inside this building before. So you have never been here? I asked with a small bit of anger in my voice. Nope, he told us. Now we all were scared as hell. I sensed that in each one of us. We were all scared and wanted to get out. But our egos didn't allow it, and we continued exploring. We went into a room. It had a sofa in it and a couple of chairs with restraints on it. Wow, this actually is abandoned and old, Reagan said. These types of chairs are not used anymore, he added. Apparently he was really into abandoned hospitals and psych wards and had been researching them a lot. Then we heard a ghostly voice whisper, "Get out." What the fuck, Joe said loudly. Then we heard a door slam shut and footsteps followed by what seemed to be chains rattling, or someone walking with chains on their body. We looked behind us and the door to the room was closed. Did that door just slam shut? I stuttered. I was terrified and almost had a panic attack. I think it did, Reagan said, also stuttering. We need to get out, Bud yelled. So we did. Joe went first and opened the door slowly. We heard nothing. We stepped back into the lobby. We heard a whisper, shh, but I couldn't hear what it said. Then we heard the chain rattle again. It sounded like it was coming closer, and it was. Every second that passed, that sound came closer and closer. We started walking towards the exit. We wanted to get out of there. I tried to open the front door, but it didn't open. What? I thought. We just came in from that door maybe 20 minutes ago. It's locked, I said. Visibly shaking. We have to find another way out, said Joe. He didn't seem scared at all. That calmed me down too, because what could happen to us, right? We started to walk inside the building looking for a way out. The rattling was gone. Weird. Then all of a sudden we heard another slam sound. I looked behind us and I can still see that picture in my head. There it was. Bud, laying on the floor, not moving nor breathing. I checked his pulse and he was dead. He had a plank attached to his head with lots of blood on the floor. What the fuck, I yelled, and we started running towards the exit. I was so scared that I almost couldn't run. We made it to the exit and opened the door. How the fuck is it unlocked? Reagan yelled, and he started to cry as well. Then we started to run away from there so fast that we even forgot our bikes. I glanced back at the building, and I saw lights on in one room and a weird figure just waving at us. We stopped to catch our breath, and I called the police. We waited for what felt like at least 2 hours, but in reality it was maybe 20 minutes. The cops arrived and we explained what happened. They went in and came out maybe 10 minutes later. They said that Bud was really dead, but the house was also empty. We were all shocked and started to cry a little, or at least me and Reagan did. Joe was calm, too calm, it was bizarre. Our friend just died, and all because we entered that abandoned ward. I never thought that this would be the last time I'm going to see Bud. She appeared when Taurus season began. Then people started vanishing. How far are you willing to go to reach the top? True to my usual form, I fucked around and found out. I'm Chad Martinez, 15 years old, freshman. Nicknamed Toro. It fits me to a T. Not only am I bullheaded, but I work hard and play harder, and my birthday is April 30th. Up until recent events, my greatest ambition was to be on the varsity track team. I trained daily, doing laps and intervals before school and hitting the gym once the last bell rang. Every morning I looked in the mirror and told myself, vale la pena. That means it's worth it, and I had to believe it. As a straight C student, I knew athletics were the only way I'd get into college. Not just any athletics. Either but track and field. Papa said I run like the wind. Mama said I run faster. Neither one of them knew what happened to me a few weeks ago. They wouldn't believe me anyway. Have you heard of the Minotaurs? Probably not. We're the loud, proud athletes of Montrose High School. Our colors are maroon and gray. And our mascot is, wait for it, a fiberglass minotaur named Mo. More on him later. At 400 students, we're one of the smaller institutions in the state. But we fought hard against consolidation. Our track team boasted 26. Coach wanted to boost us up to 30. Every slot was precious. But the last 4 were the most coveted. Mijo, Papa said. You've got 4 years to get that far. Why the rush? Because competing is a rush. When I win, I feel on top of the world. And when you lose, you come home and eat all our chips and salsa? He had me there. I'm a growing boy. My job is to make sure you grow up, not out. Again, he had me. Luckily, Mama had some different advice. Go for it. Guess who I listened to? Guess who I tried not to listen to? Even when he was barking orders? That's right, Coach. On the first day of tryouts, I made the error of revealing my nickname along with my real name. He sized me up. Toro? More like Mierda del Toro. My face grew hot. That's your name until you prove yourself. MDT for short. Now give me 10 laps. Humiliated, I could have refused, but I kept my head down and my feet pounding. That was the only way to win. I know coaches are supposed to make you mad, break you down, build you up again, and push you beyond your limits until they're obliterated. Yet the more Coach called out MDT in the days that followed, the more a dark fire of rage and shame consumed me. Rage at the insult, sure, but also rage at myself for not being all I should. As for the shame, it ran deeper and burned hotter. In fits of frustration, which happened more and more often these days, Papa said that if I didn't get my shit together, I wouldn't amount to anything. I'd be a criminal on the 6 o'clock news, branded with a lifelong record. The track was my way out of Montrose, my ticket to a better future. So I'd better get more serious about it than anything else, except for family. Of course. It didn't help that the roster was so limited. Even juniors and seniors had to start from scratch. Every year to earn their place on the team, no matter their previous accomplishments. I yearned to be among them. That meant taking one of their spots. No wonder they glared at me with such disdain and resentment. Who did I think I was anyway? Just a lowly frosh with high ambition. Only another 9th grader looked at. Me with anything resembling respect Zach Cunningham, a homeschool transfer who was behind in all his classes. Yet he ran like the devil was after him. I knew I couldn't measure up against every hopeful upperclassman or not. But at least I could pit myself against Zach and try to come out ahead. Operative word try. "What are you doing, MDT?" Coach yelled more than once. Run your own damn drills. Yeah, but I had to run them cleaner, faster, and harder than somebody if I were going to compete at the varsity level. Didn't the Hefe with the whistle realize that? Before tryouts were over, I absolutely had to defeat Zach, so the coach would finally pay me some positive attention. Little did I know that we were all about to get too much of the opposite. On the last day of tryouts, Coach called us all over to the bleachers and told us to look up. My jaw dropped. Whoa, Mo the Minotaur stood at the top, his 8-foot frame towering over each of us. Man's body, bull's head, maroon and gray shorts painted on with MHS from Montrose High School. Rumor had it that, in the old days, he used to wear a gold loincloth, but people kept taking it off and door-stealing it. So Mo, as intimidating as his charge-ready expression looked, was essentially a steer and not a bull. Many a joke was made about that, and many a snicker was stifled. Coach took Mo seriously. "Meet your drill instructor," Coach said, gesturing upward. "He'll supervise your final tryout." We laughed our typical bro laugh of ha ha ha, but stopped once we saw Coach's face. I swallowed hard and dared to ask a question. How'd you get Mo up there?" He climbed, just like you're going to climb. Dead silence. Coach had lost it. Had officially crossed the line from Loco to Locusimo. "Did you hear me? You're going to run the bleachers until Mo says you're done." Translation: you're going to run the bleachers until you pass out, puke, quit, or all three. When you reach Mo, tag him and call out the number of the set you're on. No lying. Warm up. Coach blew his whistle loud enough to set my teeth on edge. We warmed up and climbed up. Ordinarily, if I were alone, it'd bound up the steps 2 or 3 at a time. Now I knew I couldn't afford that risk. I took each step one by one, followed Coach's orders and headed down. So far, so good. After 5 of these runs, my quads ached a little, but I was nowhere near done. On your left. Zach Cunningham passed me on the way up. My heart beat faster, and I felt myself sweating bullets. This was my opportunity. I pumped my legs harder, swung my arms wider, reached Zach and took the lead. I couldn't believe it. I might get on the varsity squad after all. Not only that, but I also might impress Chandra and Kendra. These hot twins I wanted to get to know better. How I'd love to ask them to the spring formal and afterward. Get caught in between Dios Mo. Unlike Mo, I had a pair. I couldn't allow my boys to call the shots. Not now. I had more work to do. "No sandbagging, motherfuckers. Y'all can do better than that." Coach's voice exploded. What a hypocrite. He was sandbagging in a bullying sense. I ignored him. Up and down, up and down. None of us had time to ponder the absurdity of having an inanimate object tell us if we were finished. We were toiling harder than we previously had, even during our infamous ladder workouts, with no defined set or time limit. The sky was the limit on how hard to push ourselves, and push we did. We groaned, grunted, and panted like dogs, each one of us a sweaty world unto himself. This occasion was a tryout, but we busted ass like we were in the Olympics against Usain Bolt. Through all my pain and suffering, I kept my eye on Zach. He reminded me of a ram, stubborn and fiery, straight out of the gate and packing a hell of a charge, but ultimately fading in the stretch. Zach showed no sign of slowing down or tiring. However, he was making the rookie mistake of going all out on every run, not pacing himself properly. If you treat set 10 like it's set 1, thinking the end is in sight, you're not going to have enough energy if Mo says you should keep going. Speaking of which, he stood tall and silent, withstanding the hearty slaps we gave him. As much as we hated this workout, we loved it too, until our loyal mascot started to change. I didn't notice it at first. Being made out of fiberglass, Mo absorbed sunlight, so I was careful not to slap him too aggressively or spend too much time near him. When I did so on my 10th set, I did a double take. The air around him was shimmering with colorless steam, like you see on asphalt in the summer. I thought I'd better avoid touching him altogether, but Coach bellowed, "Tag him." "You losers, you afraid of a little heat?" No, I was afraid of a lot of heat, and Mo would only keep getting hotter. So would I. Why was it so important that we tag him anyway? Hoping and praying that Coach wouldn't notice, I sat down on the bleachers for a brief break. "I see you, MDT." "Are you pussying out?" I heaved a sigh, stood back up, wiped the sweat out of my eyes, and went back to work. Zach passed me again. At this point, you might be wondering why I didn't call it quits and go into my cooldown routine. That would have been the smart thing to do. However, seeing the new kid's energy and speed, his continued stamina, filled me with what we call Ghana's desire. Desire not only to beat him, but to pound him into the ground. Stomp on him until I left cleat prints on his clean white jersey. As I continued into my 11th, 12th, and 13th sets, I no longer cared about making the varsity team per se. My goal now was to make Zach Cunningham know and remember my name. Recall me as the one freshman who not only caught him, but smoked him. If I could do that, ranking among the upperclassmen afterward would simply be a bonus. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't jealous, I was just competitive. Good job. "Cunningham," called Coach. "Way to hustle. Come on, MDT, pick it up." If I did that, I might not have enough reserves to do what? 3 more sets. 5, 10? Who knew when Coach would blow his whistle and let us have a much-needed rest? One more trip down the bleachers. I was lucky I didn't trip. I prepared to start one more ascent. One thing stopped me dead in my tracks. Mo. He was glowing, bright red. Oh. No fucking way I was seeing things, having gotten way too hot, way too fast. That had to be the reason smoke billowed out of Mo's nostrils. He seemed to be grunting and heaving too, like he was getting ready to charge. The others didn't notice, though. They kept running and tagging him like he wasn't already baking in the afternoon sun. Even Zach was immune to Mo's transformation. But what exactly was Mo turning into, besides a raging bull? I was transported back in time to one evening last fall with Mama, Papa, and my grandparents, and the weirdest movie I'd ever seen. It's called Metropolis, and it's almost 100 years old. In it, a young rich dude named Freda is the son of a utopian leader. Everything is fine in their fair city, hence the title, but at what cost? Spoiler alert, dehumanized workers run it, being slaves to a giant machine. In the only scene I remember, Freda discovers this device and the poor souls who man it. Like Mo, it emits heat, but unlike Mo, it can't reach a certain temperature without blowing up. The poor old guy operating the gauges can't keep pace. The master thermometer rises from 25 to 30, all the way to 50, at which point the multi-story machine explodes, belching steam everywhere and scalding the workers. Several of them plummet to their deaths. The gears that make the machine run stop rotating, allowing Freda, who has collapsed, to experience a nightmarish vision. Instead of being made of metal, the contraption turns into a stone statue with relentlessly staring eyes. a bull's snout, and a mouth full of gear-like teeth. Freder immediately recognizes this entity. "Moloch!" he cries. Two high priests stand at the threshold of the statue's mouth, supervising unwilling slaves into the churning furnace within. Bald and shirtless, these people are cattle, food for an ever-hungry god. They struggle and fight their fate as much as possible. But Moloch's appetite wins. To Freder's horror, black-clad modern workers then follow the slaves, climbing up and into Moloch's maw in a calm and orderly way, like they've been trained to do it their whole lives. The vision then ends with the remaining machinists tending to the injured and the dead, carrying them away on stretchers. To my horror, the monstrous deity in Metropolis morphed into good old Mo. The wannabes approached him, tagged him, and called out ridiculous numbers: 20, 25, no lying, Coach roared. Do you want to be on this team or not? Someone too near the steaming statue cried out in pain and fell to his knees. Zach. He'd finally given out. With my last remaining bit of strength, I ran back up the bleachers to help. "Nah," he said when I reached him and offered him a hand. His right hand was red and blistered. "Come on, man, it's okay. You don't have to do any more sets." "Sacrifice," Zach moaned. "Mo and Coach demand it." I shook my head, snapping it back and forth. "No vale la pena. It's not worth it." More students slowed down and ended their runs, to Coach's profanity-laced disappointment. A few of them passed me, their faces slack, their eyes locked in thousand-yard stares. When they met me at the bottom of the bleachers, we were red as slabs of meat. Sweat poured off all of us. I shuddered as a dark theory occurred to me. Every time we tagged Mo, we offered up a little bit of our souls, and he came to life. Moloch, after centuries of so-called progress, breathed again. "Why'd you stop?" asked Coach. "Did I say you were done, or did Mo say you were done?" "No, sir. We did." I couldn't believe the words falling out of my mouth were my own. "We're overworked, overstressed, and overheated. We need rest and water." "We're finished. So are you." Silence. Then clapping from Zach. Then applause from the remaining poor bastards. "You know what?" Coach grinned a rictus grin. "You're a Toro after all, Martinez. As for the rest of you, minus Mr. Cunningham, you're lucky we have to have a track team at Montrose High. I disqualify all of you for not following instructions, but unfortunately, most of you made it." Cheers erupted. We soon found out our fates. Zach and I both earned JV spots. I did some digging on the internet and found out that Moloch, also spelled Moloch, was one of the most evil gods that you could worship in the Old Testament. As I suspected, he demanded human sacrifice, especially children and babies. I had to wonder, did teenagers count too? They must have. For in this day and age, the juggernaut of Montrose High School athletics makes cattle out of anyone who wants to make the team. You have to be a bull to succeed here. I may not have gotten what I originally wanted, but you know what? It's Taurus season, and I have all I need. My husband keeps texting me. He's been dead for 5 years. Drew and I had been married for 2 years when he got in the accident. Head-on collision, drunk driver, declared dead at the scene. That was back in 2020. Grieving him through the pandemic, completely isolated, was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I worked through it with my parents, with his mom. I've even started dating again, but then the texts started. I got the first one while I was on a date at some over-fancy Italian place. A text from Drew's number. It was blank. Like someone had just hit the spacebar and hit send. I got the next one a few days later in the evening, while I was curled up with a book. It just had a period. At first, I thought it was a prank, as cruel as that would be. Or maybe it was well-intentioned, by an older person or someone on the spectrum. Maybe they thought the texts would make me happy. I asked around, but no one knew. I thought about going to the police, but there was nothing threatening in them. Just strings of weird punctuation. Maybe it's a glitch, I thought. Maybe the system had reactivated his number by accident and was sending bits of code to me. But the texts seemed to have a pattern. They were often sent when I was on a date or getting ready for one. It seemed just enough to be more than coincidental. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid, that it was all just chance. As the anniversary of his death approached, though, the texts increased in frequency. They went from 1 or 2 a week to 1 a day. ... Just nonsensical punctuation. Every time, I was starting to get desensitized to them. The first one had made me cry, now they just annoyed me. On the anniversary of Drew's death, though, the texts increased tenfold. I got 5 of them before noon, over 15 in the afternoon. And as the time of his death approached, 11 p.m., they came in faster and faster. This is way more than coincidence. Someone is fucking with me. I went to the police. They said they'd be able to trace where the texts were coming from, but they'd need some time to get in touch with the cell company. Probably just a scammer, the officer had said. Even though I told him everything. There are tons of scams now, with how bad the economy is, but they're not trying to get anything out of me. I told them, and they're texting me way more today than any other day. On the day my husband died, "I'm sorry for your loss," the officer had said, in a detached tone. "We'll get in touch with you when we know more." Okay, so what else could I do? I went back home to start the tradition I did every year. At 7 o'clock, I put on his favorite movie, Stranger Than Fiction, and opened a bottle of wine. I patted the seat next to me, as if gesturing an invisible him to sit down. I liked to talk to him, pretend he was actually sitting there with me. Maggie Gyllenhaal is so cute. I told the empty spot, I'd totally date her if I wasn't married to you. And if, she wasn't a movie star. Will Ferrell is so young in this. He looks like a baby. Haha, he's so awkward. She totally hates him. My phone pinged, ... I frowned at it. I decided to call the police station again. They told me they didn't have any news. I looked at the empty spot. "I miss you," I said, sucking in a deep breath. "I miss you so much." I looked at the phone, waiting for it to ping. A small part of me wishing it would, like he'd heard me. What if the texts really are Drew, somehow? I thought of that Twilight Zone episode, where the old woman keeps getting phone calls. And then they find a downed telephone pole, the wires dangling over her husband's grave. Was this sort of the 2000s equivalent of that? Had some spooky ghost EMF jammed the wireless cell communications? But the phone didn't ping. Of course it didn't. This wasn't his ghost trying to contact me. This was someone fucking with me. Someone playing a sick game. The only answer I'd get was from the police. I got up and refilled my wine glass, but my hands were shaking as I poured. As I tried to set it back on the counter, I dropped it crash. The glass bottle shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. Merlot wine like blood pooled on the floor. "Fuck," I whispered. I got a garbage bag and bent down to pick up the pieces. Ow! The piece it picked up had sliced right into my thumb. Never clean shattered glass while you're tipsy and crying, I guess. Cursing. I stood up and ran my thumb under the faucet, staining the water-red ping. I glanced over at my phone sitting on the couch armrest. I turned off the faucet, made my way over to it. My heart plummeted as I saw the text. It had a smiley face, not a blank text. Not a string of nonsense, a fucking smiley face, after I'd just cut myself. And not any smiley face. A colon, then a space, then a parenthesis exactly how Drew made his smiley faces. He never wanted autocorrect or GChat or whatever program to turn it into an emoji or actual smiley face. Someone is watching me, and they really, really want to fuck with me. I ran over to the kitchen window, tiptoeing around the glass. I pulled the curtains shut over the sink. Then I ran around the house. Checking every lock, I called the police. "I think they're watching me," I whispered. "What?" "They sent me a smiley face, right after I cut myself." "Okay. That's probably just a coincidence. They've never sent a smiley face before. Or anything other than nonsense." "Okay, calm down. You know what? I'm going to get in touch with the cell company right away. I'll call you back in about 20 minutes. Okay? Okay. I glanced at the clock. 8:59 p.m., 12 minutes before Drew died. I walked back to the couch. Blood blooming on the paper towel wrapped around my finger. The phone was going off like crazy now. Ping, dot ping, dot dot ping. Shut up. I hissed. I looked at the empty spot. The paused frame of Maggie Gyllenhaal and Will Ferrell looking at each other. Ping, 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 shut up. 9:07 p.m. Ping, ping. Ping, ping. I picked it up. One word was mixed in with the nonsense. Dot, dot. Run. Dot, dot, dot. Period. Run, dot, run. Ping, dot, dot. Ping, 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 ping. The barrage of texts was cut off by my ringtone. The police station. Finally. Hello? I asked, my voice wavering. Get out of the house. His voice was low. Coming through the speaker. The texts are coming from inside your house. All the blood drained out of my face. I leapt up and scrambled towards the front door. Hands pulled me back roughly from behind. I fell flat on my face. Pain shot up my back. I looked up, blinking, and found myself looking up at Drew's mother. Whore, she snarled, spit spraying on my face. Her foot collided with my side as she kicked me. You think you can just pretend like he didn't exist, don't you? As soon as he's dead, you just go off and start dating again. It's been 5 years, I gasped. You never really loved him, did you? She shrieked. I tried to scramble up. She kicked me again. I coughed blood onto the carpet. Stop, I whimpered. You're nothing but a... The door slammed open. A police officer was standing in the doorway. The police had enough evidence to arrest Drew's mother. She'd been watching me, stalking me, sending the nonsensical texts to scare me. Security camera footage from various restaurants, and establishments even showed she followed me to several different dates. She didn't even have to break into the house. Drew had given her a spare key when he was alive. Shed had Drew's old number reactivated and was sending me texts all the while, hoping I'd be spooked and stop dating. Stop moving forward, stay with her in her cocoon of grief. She didn't see all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep after those dates. Wishing it was him next to me, knowing no one else would ever measure up. One thing, however, remains unexplained. The police, when they confiscated her phone, said she only ever sent symbols and smiley faces. She never sent the word run. Sometimes I wonder if those texts were from Drew, watching over me, making sure I made it out alive. I saw God. He's nothing like what we expect. I should have died. I was driving back from a friend's house, admittedly. It was far too late, and I was far drunker than I should have been. But with the ride home at just under 20 minutes, and the expectation of an open road at 3 a.m., I figured it was worth the gamble. I wish I could give some dramatic lead-up to the crash. Honestly, though, even if I remembered what happened, it would take away from the stark reality that life is oddly anticlimactic in that way. 1 second, you're going about your day. The next, darkness. No dazzling near-death montage, no slow-motion farewell. Sometimes things are just over. The cops and paramedics later explained that a big rig had struck me. Fortunately, I wasn't at fault, but my drunken haze had surely dulled my reflexes, preventing me from possibly lessening the impact or avoiding it altogether. I still think someone had to be looking out for me at the hospital, because I never had DUI charges brought against me. I digress. After the collision, everything immediately went black. I would say I sat in darkness for a while, but it wouldn't be accurate. If anyone can think of a way to describe experiencing nothing, it was that. And then, gradually, feeling came back to my body. The world around me slowly became a white blur that eventually formed into a crisp void. It was as if the universe had blinked out of existence, only to slowly reform around me in its most basic state, one where nothing had been created yet. Consciousness returned in sluggish waves. My mind strained to answer the most basic questions before I could even ask. Where am I? I had to answer where am I even meant? If you've ever been completely disoriented, you know how your mind scrambles to piece together reality in a desperate attempt to forge a larger, comprehensible picture. Problem is, I had no frame of reference for where I was. Even as my mind tried to catch up to my body, it searched for some kind of key to unlock the door of clarity, only to find that even in the deepest recesses of my mind, that key didn't exist. Great. I stood and then, like a lightning bolt striking some repressed chord in my brain, everything returned to me. Who I was, where I was before the darkness, and the best answers I could give to my pseudo-philosophical questions. For a moment, it was painful. So much so that it briefly sent me back down to my knees. Not just because of the shock of the moment, but because I knew something about this place was still in there. The void was warm. My previous drunkenness had gone, and I could breathe better than I ever could before. The air tasted sweet and smelled of apples. Odd. All I could see was white. No external sound was present. Testing this, I yelled, but the sound simply vanished. No echo. My first thought was maybe I was in a dream. But using the tried and true method of trying to lightly injure myself, I found that it wasn't the case. My clothes made it to where I was, but my car keys and phone didn't. With no means of communicating with anyone, the best thing I could think to do was walk, and so I did. For how long? I couldn't even begin to tell you. The walk might have been one of the most disorientating parts of my adventure. One moment, it would feel like I had been walking for days. The next, I'd swear I had only been walking for a few minutes. The whole time. I never got tired or felt the need to eat or drink. My perception of direction warped. What felt like walking in a straight line would suddenly morph into the unsettling suspicion of endless circles or random turns. There were no landmarks to offer reassurance, just the persistent, illogical sensation of constant motion leading to nowhere. I had to stop momentarily because I could feel my brain breaking. Looking back into the white expanse, I caught a glimpse of someone mirroring my build and face, but dressed in clothes I'd never seen. I shouted for the other me and dashed over, only for the figure to vanish instantly, leaving behind a surge of alien memories. Memories of experiences I apparently had but swore I'd never lived. What the fuck was this? That was the moment I considered that I had to be in some sort of hell. Trapped forever in a silent void, doomed to go insane. Surrounded by mirages and false memories, I slumped back into the nothingness, hopeful that even though I didn't need it, maybe I could try to sleep and wake up in a better place. At least one with people, sounds, something. I closed my eyes and attempted to drift off into sleep. It was maybe 5 minutes of relentless dark, before a sound pierced the silence, a whisper, a genuine murmur in this soundless realm. The words were indistinguishable, but I didn't care. I jolted upright, straining to hear. It persisted. I ran toward the sound, using it as a radar to find its source. The louder it became, the more desperate I was to head in its direction. Countless minutes, hours, and likely days went by. My sole goal was to follow this one link back to humanity until I found them. The whisper stopped. It was silent again. The silence gave way to a disquieting scene. A vast sea of people extending infinitely into the void. Some dressed in gray robes, others wearing everyday clothes. Each was separated by about 6 to 10 feet. Every single person knelt in deep prayer. My gaze drifted upwards, mirroring the people down here I noted. Countless dark lines etched against the white expanse. But my attention was soon stolen by something far more significant. Beyond the kneeling masses, a colossal form materialized on the horizon. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. But the more I walked toward it, the more I understood. It sat there. I'd estimate it was many times the size of the largest object humanity has ever built. It resembled a gargantuan brain, its silver surface slick with a viscous, translucent green slime, like a creature suspended within a gelatinous shroud. Elongated frontal lobes tapered into sharp, unsettling points. Countless tentacles extended from its body far into the distance. Two long eye stalks protruded from the top and bent back down to watch over the praying people. It never kept its gaze in one spot for long, but it certainly had more interest in some people than others. I looked around, and everyone stayed exactly where they were, praying toward this abomination. Instinctively, I shook the closest woman next to me. I tried to scream at her that we all needed to leave. I didn't know where to go. But this obviously wasn't safe. She didn't so much as flinch when I tried. No time. I noticed I had caught the thing's attention. I moved to the next man. And I got the same response. Another one. Again, nothing. The hell is wrong with all of you? I thought. There was no possible way everyone here was entirely unaware of the looming monster. I looked up, and those stalks were already over me. They stretched down until they were mere feet from my face. It made some deep, booming, unintelligible sound that almost resembled language before its tiny pupils dilated and flashed a bright light at me. I didn't want to stick around and find out the reason for its interest. I sprinted in the other direction, pure terror guiding my feet in a random direction. I thought that finding people would be my salvation, only to realize that everyone else who made it here had found themselves in hell. Naive as I was, I thought I could outrun the thing until I was lofted into the air. One of its many slimy tentacles had wrapped around my body and was slowly making its way up my neck and deep inside my nostrils. The black streaks closed in as I ascended into the sky. Only when we finally stopped did the horrifying truth reveal itself. They were people, fucking people. Each was a lifeless puppet dangling from thick, invasive tentacles snaking into their nostrils. For some, apparently, that wasn't enough for the creature. It had entered through their ear canals. For others, the tendrils opted to pierce directly through their eye sockets. I didn't know if anyone there was alive or dead. All I knew was that the bodies extended into the infinite as I looked out. As above, so below. Tentacles were branching off each other, constantly at work, continually bringing new people from the prayer pile into the sky with the rest of us. When I looked down, I could see some people being released, only for them to go straight back into prayer. I looked on in horror as tiny eye stalks emerged from the tentacle that had grabbed me. It looked deep into my eyes, and I could feel it reaching up my nasal cavity until it had penetrated my skull. I don't know how I didn't scream out in agony as it made contact with my brain. When it did, I assumed a horrific death wouldn't be far behind. My eyes rolled to the back of my head, but instead of liquefying my brain or pulling squishy bloody chunks out through my nose, something amazing happened. I saw a cavalcade of colors. The entire spectrum of light, shades I didn't even know existed, danced before me. Strings of numbers and alien symbols flashed among them, forming equations, and somehow I could process it all. For each second I watched this display, massive repositories of information flowed through my mind, and I began to understand more than hundreds, maybe thousands, of minds could comprehend. The numbers and colors blended together to form images I could feel. Images of me living past lives, not only as a human being, but all the way back to when we were single-celled organisms. Throughout all of time, every experience, every piece of knowledge, and every minuscule reaction to our world had been stored. And now, it was all coming back. Much had changed through my experience, but there was one constant throughout it all. One force that was always guiding me beyond where I could see. More accurately, it guided us in our world in far too complex of ways for me to begin to understand, let alone relay. But one thing was clear. He had somehow built much of our experience. He somehow had been the reason we were here. And we were all always meant to come back. And the reason why became clear. He was God, not the God of the false stories they tell on our tiny little rock. No, the human mind, or at least the one we currently experience, is far too simple to understand something beyond creation, let alone even begin to conceptualize what such a being could be, or its purpose. See, we think in terms of ourselves. We believe such a being must look similar to us, think similarly to us. Have goals that seem rather human. How naive.
How do you explain a being that forms worlds using code?
And mathematics that our greatest quantum computers couldn't begin to calculate. A being that can communicate vast amounts of information through a precise showing of color so effectively that even someone who had never seen its displays before would always understand it perfectly. A being with an absolute understanding of our universe down to its most minute principles. This not only allows such a being the ability to predict all future events perfectly, but also allows it to adjust those principles as it sees fit. I'm sure that even the form I saw wasn't truly what it looked like. It was simply my mind's best guess as to what I was seeing. The funny thing was, as I remained suspended there, absorbing this information, it became clear that I had been there before. We all have. We have all had these revelations, and have been one of those people praying before him, hoping he would allow us to see just a fraction of what he knows, allowing for a glimpse into the infinite. Then, as abruptly as all this began, it was simply over. The void dissolved, replaced by a hospital room's stark, sterile white. Blurry shapes gradually sharpened into the mundane reality of medical equipment. My mind struggled to ask the fundamental questions of what happened and where I was. Of course, I didn't remember anything that happened. None of us do. And like everyone else, I would have moved on and gone on with the rest of my life. But recently, I've had these dreams. I call them dreams, though they feel like a continuous, unbroken experience that sometimes bleeds into the edges of my waking perception. In them and back at that place, talking with the version of me I attempted to speak within the void. He tells me of my last experience there, and that time works in such a way that there is always a version of myself exploring, sometimes simultaneously. To prove it's real, I ask about things in my world, things I have no business knowing, but with the understanding that a version of me with this vast knowledge should. Every single answer given to me has turned out to be true. I don't know where I heard this from, but someone suggested that our minds are almost like radios. Under the right conditions, we can tune into specific frequencies from outside our realm of existence. I don't know if that's what's happening here, but it fits. As I walk through this place in my dreams, more comes back. Sometimes I lose other pieces, and I'm sure there are events I don't recognize now that will return later. In fact, I'm almost certain that, given enough time, I won't remember any of it. It's a big reason I'm writing this down now. As I talk to my other self, he explains that he has this theory that there's a reason for all of this, that he has some purpose for all of us, but needs us to reach a point where we can understand what was meant to happen. That part still keeps me awake at night. But I suppose there's something that we need to have a certain amount of knowledge to do. There's a level that each of us has to attain to even begin to communicate with him on his level, let alone become what is needed. As for me, I don't think it was my time to stop learning in this form. At the same time, I can't help but think that my going through that and relaying it to all of you was part of his plan. The truth is, I'm not the only person to speak of their experience with death. Maybe we need all of those people to talk about their experiences to really get an understanding of what we're dealing with. Just a hypothesis. Still though, the more I think about that place and my time there, the more questions I have. Honestly, it's been driving me kind of crazy. So I'm hoping that after I get this out, I'll be able to stop thinking about it for a while. I just can't shake the feeling that some bad events are coming down the pipeline either. They always do, of course. But something says that a uniquely devastating event is coming for our species. I lost almost all of the information that flowed through me in that place. But I think something must be stuck. Some combined insight points to our world heading toward a truly awful experience. Think about it. This god never showed any signs of being particularly good or loving. Knowledgeable, yes. Yet this same entity has overseen every mass extinction, every bombing, every act of human cruelty. The fact is, There's a lot of learning through pain. I've become more fearful, knowing what's out there, but not knowing what it desires. And yet, a good part of me still wants to go back. But that place has a grip on my mind like nothing else. I'd be lying if I said that knowledge wasn't absolutely intoxicating. Far beyond anything on earth could ever be. What more did I know? What does it want with us? Sometimes I lie awake just thinking about everything it could share. These are questions that a million of us wouldn't think of asking. And the answers a billion of us are dying to know. Knowing all that knowledge is just over the edge of death and how easy it would be to just tip over. Let myself free fall back into the void. Back into a place where I can beg for that fraction of a fraction. Don't worry. I plan on living until the day I die from natural causes. But it's something I live with, and it makes me question how many people that place sticks with on some deeper level. Many of us don't even know we want to return there, because in reality, we belong there. It's where all of us are destined to be. The one place we all know is at the end of our journey. I could go on forever with these questions, but there isn't enough time in the world to answer them. So I simply want to thank those who made it this far. You can't imagine how good it feels to get this off my chest. For those who have experienced something similar, or had their own unique experiences on the other side, I'd love to hear from you as well. Please, take care of each other and yourselves. And remember, there's no need to spend too much time staring into the abyss. The abyss is already waiting for all of us. I think there's something living in my walls. The following narrative has been adapted from police records, 911 transcripts, and documentation collected during the investigation of a reported home disturbance between November 12th and November 18th. For privacy reasons, names and addresses have been changed to protect the innocent and to avoid interference with the open case file. The subject of the report: a single occupant of a residential property in redacted county placed multiple emergency calls over the course of 6 days, each escalating in urgency. The final call came at 3:17 a.m. on November 18th and ended abruptly. Responding officers arrived on scene and made entry into the home, November 14th. I don't know exactly when the weird stuff started. I think it's been going on for a while, but I've only just started to notice. Now, every time I think back to something that could have been linked to forgetfulness or coincidence, my hair stands on edge. It started with small things: a book being misplaced, the thermostat being changed, or the doormat being shifted. Last night, though, I woke up at 2:46 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone. I thought I'd heard something upstairs, like slow, steady footsteps. Just 4 or 5 of them, then nothing. Maybe it was a tree branch knocking against the house. Maybe it was the house settling. I told myself all kinds of excuses to make my mind stop racing. But it didn't feel like that. It felt intentional. When I got out of bed this morning, the hallway light was on. I never leave that light on, ever, and my bedroom door, which I know I shut, was open about 6 inches. I stood there staring like an idiot for a full minute, just trying to convince myself I'd forgotten, that I was just tired, that I'm stressed. But I swear I remember lying in bed with a cold sweat, thinking about the footsteps or the knocking I heard last night, and the only light being from my dimmed phone screen. In fact, it felt darker than it ever has in my life. Transcript 911, call date November 14th, time 11:42 a.m., caller Susan Armstrong. Call type suspicious activity. Dispatch 911, what's your emergency? Caller, Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. I am not even sure this is an emergency. Dispatch, that's okay. Just tell me what's going on. Where are you right now? Caller, I live alone. And I've been hearing noises upstairs. Footsteps, like actual walking. I live at Redacted. I thought it might be the HVAC or something, but it's too rhythmic. I checked the attic myself, didn't see anything, but I'm still hearing it. and I'm freaked out. Dispatch, do you believe someone might be inside your home? Does anyone else have access? Caller, I don't know. I don't think so. The doors were locked, and nothing looks disturbed, but it doesn't feel right. My friend Lauren has a key, but she hasn't been over. Dispatch, okay. Officers are on the way. Are you safe? Caller, yeah. I'm downstairs. I know I sound paranoid. I just needed someone to hear me say it out loud. I feel crazy. Dispatch, it's no trouble. Officers are on the way. Stay on the line until they arrive. Pause, caller. It's just quiet now. Completely quiet. Like whoever or whatever it was stopped, or is listening. Report log Officer D. Westbrook and Officer R. Allen, time on scene. 11:56 a.m., 12:22 p.m. Conducted walkthrough of property at resident's request. No signs of forced entry. Attic and crawl spaces checked clear. Subject appeared nervous but coherent. Reported items out of place in home over previous days, but nothing stolen. Home otherwise orderly. Subject advised to contact HVAC technician regarding potential structural noises. No further action taken. November 15th. Didn't sleep again. Not sure how anyone could with the sounds above my head. I kept hearing the vent rattle in a way. That doesn't make sense unless someone is up there tapping it. Like a pattern, like breathing. There was a granola bar wrapper on the counter this morning. I haven't had those in the house in over a week. Did I forget I bought one? Am I that tired? I called Lauren this afternoon. Left a message. I was embarrassed, so I tried to make it sound funny, said. Something about needing a priest or an exorcist. I don't think she ever called back. November 16th. Maybe it's because I watched a scary movie. Maybe it's because I'm scared to sleep. Today, I decided maybe the joke I made yesterday wasn't a joke. I was raised religious. My dad was an alcoholic who cheated on my mom. And my mother committed suicide, but that didn't stop her from making us go to church every Sunday until she died. I called a local priest and asked him to come over. Last night, the bumps didn't stop. I found a door open that I know was shut. I can't tell if I'm being haunted, but something isn't right. He didn't say much when he arrived, just looked around. Asked if it had trouble sleeping, if I felt safe. If I was having spiritual symptoms, I didn't know how to answer. It's not a demon, he said eventually. I didn't say that it was. People always jump to that. Noises in the house, feeling watched, doors open. Lights flickering. They want it to be spiritual because that's easier than thinking they're losing control. But this, he gestured to the ceiling, this doesn't feel like a haunting. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. He prayed with me. I didn't really listen. I was too focused on the faint creak upstairs. I'm not sure he even heard it. He left after 20 minutes. Told me to get some rest. Said I should try sleeping with a light on. Nothing wrong with that. November 16th. Late evening. I didn't want to write this. It's hard to even type. I found a pair of my underwear on the laundry room floor tonight. Not in the basket, just on the tile, like it had been dropped. They were clean. Folded. I remember putting them away. I opened the drawer to check. Everything else was there. I've been telling myself it's stress. That I'm overtired and forgetting things, but I don't forget things like this. Not this clearly. Something shifted upstairs. Not a creak. Something moved. I froze in the hallway and listened. It went quiet again, like it knew. I sat on the couch for hours. Couldn't bring myself to go back to my room. Lauren still hasn't called me back. Transcript 911 call, time 11:58 p.m. Caller Susan Armstrong, call type possible intruder. Dispatch 911, what is your emergency? Caller whispering, hi. Yes, I need someone to come to my house. Dispatch, can you confirm your address? Caller redacted dispatch, what's happening? Caller, I think there's someone inside my house. Dispatch, are you in a safe place right now? Caller M in the hallway closet. I didn't know where else to go. Dispatch, is the door locked? Caller, yes. Dispatch, what makes you think someone's in your home? Caller. I heard moving above me. And I found something earlier that wasn't where I left it. Something personal. Pause dispatch. Has anyone else been in your home today? Caller, no one. I live alone. Sound soft creak on floorboards. Caller whispers, please just send someone. Dispatch officers are en route. Stay on the line with me. Caller, I don't want to move. I don't want them to know I'm here. Silence, very faint sound movement overhead. Caller breathes. Heavily. Caller, almost inaudible. It's in the walls. Report log Officer M. LeClaire and Officer J. Rivers. Time on scene, 12:06 a.m. 12:37 a.m. Responded to 911 call from resident reporting potential intruder. Caller located inside hallway closet, unharmed but visibly distressed. Full walkthrough conducted. No signs of forced entry. Attic hatch closed. No tampering visible. No suspect found. Resident advised to seek temporary relocation. Declined. November 17th. I didn't sleep again. I thought exhaustion would catch up to me eventually, but it hasn't. If anything, I feel more alert. Not awake, just vigilant. Like him waiting, everything was quiet again today. Not peaceful, just still. The kind of still that makes your ears ring. I walked the perimeter of the house. Windows locked, latches secure. Nothing out of place. Except the photo frame in the living room, it was turned. Not knocked over, just turned, facing the hallway. Around sunset, I stood under the attic hatch. I didn't open it, just stared at it. I could feel something up there. Not a presence, not a ghost. Just an awareness. I think I'm done waiting. I think I'm going to open the wall. Final police report, November 18th. Time on scene 3:25. AM responding officers Sergeant E. Caro. Ofgati Greer responded to 911 call that ended mid-transmission at 3:17 a.m. No contact made upon arrival. Door found unlocked. Entry made under exigent circumstances. Interior lights were on. No verbal response from resident. Upstairs hallway showed signs of recent activity. Ladder extended beneath attic access. Hatch ajar. Claw hammer recovered on floor. Attic initially clear. Officers discovered irregular paneling near. HVAC ductwork in northern crawlspace. Recessed cavity located behind insulation and false framing. Inside one twin mattress, food wrappers. Water bottles, clothing, flashlight. And multiple personal items belonging to resident Susan Armstrong. Also present body of Susan Armstrong, blunt force trauma, facial mutilation. Fingernail gouges observed on interior wall. Biological material recovered, testing pending, resident secured. Investigation escalated to homicide, no suspect in custody. The basement tenant. Like and Rashad had just moved into their first home together, an older, slightly rundown rental, but perfect for their budget and quiet enough for the life they were building. A week in, Rashad joked that the place had personality, mostly because of the weird noises at night and how cold the basement always felt, even in the middle of summer. One day while organizing the garage, Lika found a second set of keys labeled basement access owner only. She thought it was odd since they'd already been in the basement to do laundry. When she asked the landlord about it, he quickly brushed it off with a mumbled, "Old locks, nothing to worry about." Then strange things started happening. Likwe would wake up to the washer running, but empty. Rashad swore he heard soft footsteps below them when they were in bed. Once, their dog refused to go down there and just growled at the basement door all night. Things escalated fast. Rashad came home early from work one afternoon to find the basement door wide open. Thinking Likwe was down there, he called out, no answer. So he went down and found nothing but the flickering laundry light and a strange, metallic smell in the air. Later that night, Leaky told him she had been out all day. They finally decided to set up a camera near the basement stairs. Half laughing about it, half not. The next morning, they checked the footage. At 3:17 a.m., the basement door creaked open. A figure crawled out on all fours, thin, pale, wearing nothing but a stained shirt and boxers. He stood slowly, listening, then walked up to the second floor. For 6 full minutes, he stood silently over Liquay and Rashad's bed as they slept. Then he walked back down and disappeared into the basement. When they showed the footage to the police, the landlord was forced to speak. There was a crawl space under the basement meant for old piping access, but apparently a homeless man had lived down there for years, unnoticed before the previous tenants moved out. The landlord thought he was gone when the place was cleaned out, but when police searched the crawl space, it was empty again. Just a small mattress, a bag of raw meat, and dozens of Polaroid photos of Liquay and Rashad sleeping. Each photo was labeled with the same word, written in shaky black marker mine. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing, but don't blame me if you can't sleep tonight. Until next time, keep the lights on and the doors locked. Goodbye.